Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to Coffee Can't Fix Everything. This is a show where we talk about mental health over a cup of coffee, and I got none other. Man, I don't know how many times you've been on
Too
my
many to
show.
count.
I know.
It's becoming natural at this point.
It's
I
so
love
natural.
it. I love it.
We had a podcast before we even hit recording.
Facts. We just been chatting. We like, oh, we actually probably should record,
We
right?
should probably
Yes,
record.
yes.
Yeah, we could have a part two.
Facts.
But I don't even know how to even introduce you, Kayla, because you do so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, yeah.
You are a mental health, not only therapist, but influencer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like leader in the community.
Yeah, yeah.
Created the first ever here in the area Black Mental Health Conference. That was honored to be a part of.
Yeah.
Um, Even though sometimes I feel weird about that, Kayla, because I'm not a therapist. So it makes me feel weird that I'm around all these people that really about that life, and I'm just like, I'm an advocate. You know what I'm saying?
Don't dim your light.
I'm not gonna do my life. I'm not, but I'm like,
Yeah.
y'all can speak on that way better than I can. You know what I mean? But as a health equity advocate, and I advocate for all
Yeah.
areas of health equity,
Yeah.
right? Mental health is a big part of that, and I am a believer of having easy mental wellness access for all.
Yeah.
So, and I have lived experience. So there's
Yeah.
I feel like I should have been there, but it's like I was like, yo, there's some. I forgot the lady who sat next to me.
Deborah Carr.
Deborah, whew, I was
She-
like,
she's-
golly.
She's that girl.
I didn't know what to say. I'm like, what do I say after her?
Yes, yes.
But Kayla, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. But a common theme that I've been noticing in what just with some of your content lately, just around me in general, is the importance of community healing.
Yeah.
When I say that to you, when I say community healing, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so to me, it's like warmth. It's love, it's care, it's intentional, and it's a multitude of it, right? So a lot of times we think about healing, therapy, we think about this like one-to-one, either relationship with myself or relationship with a helping professional. When we think about community healing, it's like a complete embrace. Like you have pockets and environments and spaces that you can go to know that you'll always have something or someone available to you to support you. So it's this inherent like belongingness, connection. That's what I think about community healing. But the beautiful piece, kind of going back to yours, you started saying like, I don't know if I should be in this space. I was like, it's not only mixed of professionals, especially as Black people. We have so many ancestral practices, natural. Like, you was talking, you was just like, God got me. I was like, where did, like some of that stuff just feel like, wait, I just aged myself. Where did that come from? What did I say? I was like, that's the ancestral wisdom inside you, right?
Yeah.
And I believe us as community, we have so many things that make us who we are, that overcome situations. That's like embracing the community with just that, but also professionals. But it doesn't have to be professionals. It can be whatever community means to you.
That's so true. And you said something. I consume your content, and
Thank you,
so you said something. I don't remember when it was, but you had talked about going. And it makes sense with community. Is that there are times where there are practices that we have in our community that aren't evidence based, but if it's not evidence based, there are people that feel like it's irrelevant or it doesn't work.
100%.
And there are things that I know that my grandma was not a licensed nothing, but there are things that she wasn't no doctor,
Yep.
but if she gave me something that's something her grandma told her or whatever, that worked for me.
100%. 100%.
So like, how do we start to incorporate or mesh that kind of that community healing aspect or those things that we passed down from our ancestors into these professional spaces, because they're important.
Absolutely. It starts, we have to believe them, that they work, right? It's not
Right.
voodoo, or it's not just
right.
this thing. It's like
Right.
they work, they're helpful, and they have value. That's where we get the separation between this is evidence-based, this is what works, this is helpful, which is helpful,
Right.
but then we devalue all these other practices because they never get permission to go into the rooms to be research-based. Right? 'Cause that's money. That's a whole other conversation, right? So
Yeah.
we have to take the capitalism out of the healing practices that we already do. right? And so that starts with learning, like, what are the ways that my people have been healing long before we had access to therapy, long before we had access to a lot of healthcare. I mean, my
Yeah.
mom told me a cup of tea and some mustard will help my digestive issues, and I live by that. I didn't need to go to my PCP to find that out. I said, well, stomach hurt, where's my mustard?
Where's my
right? And it works. Woo, I tell you, that jug works to this day. A little honey, right? But I learned it because my mom told me, and I trusted her, and I believed her,
Right.
and I tried that, right? Because truthfully, the things that we do, we seek help from someone, we trust them, we believe them because we see their credentials. So we are already kind of monopolizing who has the right to help us and help heal us, but then we don't have access to them often, right? So if I don't have finances, then what does that mean? I'm by myself. Community healing is realizing, no, I got this. So before we think about evidence-based and bringing it, lived experience evidence has to be a part of the play. It can't just be only driven by this qualitative and quantitative measure of like, this is what's helpful for people, because sometimes every person doesn't get opportunities to enter that room. So it's looking at who are the lived experiences, and can that be lived evidence as well? I've seen that this is helpful to you. How about you try this as well? And maybe it's not, maybe it will, but that's where you get to build some trust, is actually realizing, no, we know what we're doing as well, and we can get more help in these specific spaces if we get lost and we need additional support.
Yeah, wow, that's so real. That's so real. I'm gonna try the mustard joint next time I have some problems.
You should. Let me know. A spoonful of mustard. Now, if there's any doctors watching this, listen, don't come for me. I'm not claiming it works. I'm saying it worked for me.
It works.
And it worked for my mama.
It worked for
And that's enough evidence for me in
That's
this
enough.
moment.
Word.
And it's helpful. Yeah.
It is helpful. The one thing that's coming in my mind right now when I'm thinking about community and trying to be an advocate or someone that's there to serve and help is, how can we heal the community when ourselves are still going through a healing process? Right? Like, I would love to get your thoughts on it, but like, I am, like myself, I'm going through my own mental wellness journey, right? And sometimes it feels like you may feel like a hypocrite. Like, who am I to help somebody when I can barely help myself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how do you work through that?
Absolutely. Well, when we think of healing, healing isn't done in isolation, right? So we heal in connection with other people. The only way that we would heal in isolation is the idea if we just lived in isolation. But because we're social beings, we're constantly having interactions between each other. That's why like a random act of kindness can make someone else's day, and you pass that ripple down to other people. So when we think about how do I help others when I can't help myself, it's more of how do I help others as I help myself. Because what ends up happening is if I'm helping someone else as I'm trying to help myself through that, that person is being helped. And then that gets passed down, right? We're creating a ripple of everyone helping each other, right? And so we think about like a whirlpool. If you keep moving that motion, eventually you create a whole new motion in which everyone is feeling helped and supported. So if you feel stuck, well, I know I'm not alone in this. As I'm figuring out myself, I know someone else has my back. Right, and that's the beauty, I think, in the Black community, is because we're very collectivistic, right? We think about grief. It don't matter what happens in your life. Somebody's coming to bring you food. They're checking in on you.
That's real.
You know, that's part of healing and community, is when you have community, it's not necessarily my stuff doesn't matter. It's like my stuff matters, but I recognize your stuff matters too. And then we kind of help each other. So kind of like navigating a boat that feels like it's shaky is like we're making sure that this is in rhythm, and the rhythm is in connection.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's built in, because you immediately feel that way. If somebody's going through something, immediately, how can I support?
Right, yeah.
Let's make them something. Let's support them in some way. I know it can be hard to do so, you know, for some people, depending on life situations, but it almost feels like a natural pull to want to do it, and maybe that's just how we've been all along.
Right, yeah. I mean, historically, we've always only had each other, right, in the most horrific conditions, literally. So it's like, I see them hurting and aching. How can I help lift them up in that moment? It's not like I want you to like be down. That's individualism, right? So how can I lift you up? And then knowing your boundaries. I think where we're at in society now is like, yes, you might not have so much to give. That's a check-in with yourself. Say, what can I offer? Does it feel okay? And if I can't offer it right now, when can I offer it? Or who can offer to help me as well in the process?
Right. Right. You know, 2024, you know, now, you know, community looks different. Now we have communities online. You have you have a huge community online presence. How walk me through your process of how you cultivate your community?
Yeah,
Like, is there something you go through? Is it just you like, okay, this is what I think my community needs?
Right,
Like, how
yeah.
do you work through that?
Absolutely. I love TikTok. Like, just for the main reason it makes healing so accessible. So how I think of it as community healing. In many ways, I'm building relationships with people. So I respond to every comment. I may not get to it right in that moment, that day, but I see it as like every person I'm interacting with is not a follower, it's a person
Right.
that's supporting me, and they're supporting me makes me like want to support as well. So they ask questions. I'm like, is that a question that I can answer? I make a video to reply. I thank people for following me. I thank them for their comments. I soak in the messages. Like, they're starting to give me affirmations. I didn't expect that when I
Yo,
first
that's so
started.
crazy.
I had no idea. I get DMs, multiple DMs, comments saying like how this has been so helpful to them because they didn't have a therapist and couldn't afford it. And someone recently posted saying, I've always felt this way, but now I feel like I actually can help this part of me that's been stuck. So for me, it's more of I recognize sometimes I'm going through something and I have some thoughts about it, and I
Right.
put that into the world because I recognize I'm not a person individual. Like, if I'm feeling something, there's probably somebody
Ain't
out
that
there
crazy?
that feels that. Yeah.
Yeah, ain't that crazy? You can almost feel like, and this is anything, you almost feel like, man, I'm the only one feeling this, or I'm the only one who's had this experience. And you can just give it to the world, and there are thousands of people who've had the same exact experience, but maybe didn't have a solution to it or a way of expressing it.
Right.
And then they're feeling seen, like, oh my gosh, this person that is thousands of miles from me knows me.
Right. Yeah.
That is it's almost unbelievable in the way, like, but you're that person. Like, you're the person
Which is wild.
that's like, like,
Yeah.
I live a hop, skip, and a jump from you, but I'm on TikTok, and you say something like, man, community healing is this, that, and the third. And I'm like, it is, Kayla.
Yeah, facts. And that's the beauty, right? It's like, because you said
Yeah.
they see me, but it's like, how powerful is it to feel seen?
My
because
goodness.
often people are feeling like I'm not seen, or I can't talk about it, or they feel ashamed. And this is really what my platform is all about. It's like, I want to alleviate shame related to what we feel, because shame is the thing that keeps us stuck, and then it doesn't give us permission to open
Right.
up and share because we're just too embarrassed or afraid of what might happen, or how we
Right.
might be believed or felt by others, or even seen by others. So it's like, open it up. It's like, I'm going to share this. I know there's somebody else
Right.
out there. It gives permission to say, oh, I feel that too. And then we have permission to create community, right? Because
Right.
now I don't have to hold my pain by myself. It's okay to feel this pain with someone else because that's invited in. And I think a lot of times thinking community healing was the barriers. It's like, there's not an invitation, right? Community isn't always community, right? It's like people come together, but are we actually in relationship with each other? Or are we in comparisons? Or are we judging? Or is it just based on a transactional relationship? We're in community because we got to get this other thing done.
Oh,
But what
got
I
you.
believe in community healing is it's an invitation for you to bring your full self in and be accepted, warmed, communicated with, loved, comforted, all of these pieces in whatever state that you're in. And we're knowing that you can work through things together. That's in itself is where that pain and the burdens get to start to be released.
No, that's real. And one thing that's a beautiful thing about community, sometimes maybe can be difficult to maneuver around, is community is also multi-generational.
Yeah, yeah.
There are so many, you know what I'm saying, the way that I would talk to my mom would be different than I talk to you, would be different than I talk to my daughter.
Absolutely.
But you navigate that so well because you're also in many different spaces.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You got to have your therapy talk, which sometimes, depending on who you're speaking with, could be your normal self, but sometimes you're talking to maybe somebody older. Or how do you find that middle ground of being able to connect with your community, but understanding that some of them are coming from different areas or different
Absolutely.
times?
Yeah, I start with that piece right there. Is like they're coming from different spaces in compassion, right? We have very different walks of life. Like, I'm very different than a lot of the people that I really connect with. It's like, it's just very different. And we can joke about it. With my grandma, we talk, and I'm like, she's like, don't you go dye your hair red. Like, we live in two different generations.
Right.
So when I first started healing, though, I perceived that as judgment, though. Like, there were so many parts of me that held shame. It's like, I feel like you're attacking my way of living. And that disconnected us from being in community, because I felt like we couldn't be here. When I started to heal and recognize what was being activated inside me, first and foremost, I realized I just needed acceptance, right? And I had to figure out how to work with that feeling, and where did that come from, this need of acceptance and belonging in this particular way, and how I felt if they couldn't offer me that in that way. So as I developed more compassion for myself, and I was able to create communities where I felt like I could receive that, I was able to open up the door for communities with people who maybe couldn't offer that in the ways that I needed that, because that was my wound that got activated, and I had to figure out, how do I get support to help through that, and how do I build community that can help with that. And so when I'm talking to people in different generations or even different backgrounds, it's more of like, what's the hope in this conversation? If you're coming with compassion and I'm coming with compassion, then we can have a conversation. We can hold space for each other, and I can have more empathy and understanding from where you're coming from. You can have empathy and understand where I'm coming from, because our shared goal is community. Sometimes we have these conversations, the shared goal isn't community. It's, I want to disagree, I want to be right, I want to figure out all these different pieces, but it's not true community and connection.
Right. Do you feel like people force community sometimes?
Oh, 100%. I would say this was happening before the pandemic. And I think we're socialized. When you think about school, like, you're in a class and you're expected to be friends. I work, with college students, and like, oh, this is going to be the best time of my life. It's like, it may not, right? You may meet your best friends in college or in high school. But you may not. You might meet them at a workplace. You might meet them at a random event. You might meet them at a bar, or you might meet them at church. Real. So I think what happens is, socially, we say these are the spaces where community is supposed to happen. But the systems and structures in place aren't building community. They're building a lot of partnerships. They're building a lot of networking. But I feel like community is different. And when you force it, that's when you feel that rift. That's where you feel this discomfort. And that's where you start to internally blame yourself or blame someone else, which pulls you further away.
Yeah, and you see it especially in schools and college. I would say more so high school or like middle school. And I've seen myself do it in a sense of like, hey, go play with them kids over there. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all like
family like gatherings.
Oh my
That's your
God,
cousin.
That's your cousin. If you don't go talk to your cousin, like, I don't even know this dude. Like,
exactly.
Like, now I gotta be like, luckily I'm grateful to have cousins that I grew up with and that I love. They are my best friends. But I also got cousins that I've never met in my life, and I was expected to go like kick it. And I don't know. I mean, exactly. Are we really cousins? Because you could just be a friend of my mama.
Or if I don't like you, right? Like, like, when you think of like all these dynamics. So yes, even embedded, yes, blood or family should be. It could be. That's how we talk. It's socialized to be like, that's family, but that might not be people's community all the time. Yeah,
that's so real. That's so real. Walk me through. I want to go back to kind of the online, the internet communities, and not specifically TikTok, but just like social media in general, because you're building a positive community, but we also know there is a dark side to some of that too. How do you maneuver some of the negativity within maybe your own community, or like how, if somebody is just maybe more of a consumer of in trying to be a part of the community, like, what do you have any thoughts or ideas of how somebody can kind of stay away from the negativity? Because that's hard to do, but I know it's a hard question, but like any thoughts?
Absolutely. When we think of like the negativity, it starts as like an energy experience or energetic experience. How you're feeling when you look at someone's content should tell you a little bit about what's happening. And this is when you talk about forcing community, because a lot of times we're like, oh, I really like them because they're this popular person, or they're talking about this, but I'm not really vibing with them, or I'm not connected. I don't really like what they say, or I don't like what's happening. So, but you feel forced or inclined to continue to engage. We're already dismissing what our body is telling us. And I went through this with someone. It's like, we are very, I would say, technique-wise, very aligned. But when I looked at their content all the time, and they're a very popular influencer, I'm like, wow, they're cool. Maybe it's me. And I was like, I don't feel happy when I look at their page. Like, the things and the way they talk about people, not necessarily people we work with, but people who disagree with them, that didn't connect with me. And I was like, well, why am I still following? Like, what is happening in this? And I think that's the difference in online presence versus in-person presence and community is I can ask myself, what is the intent behind me following? And I had to sit with that. And for me, I was like, I felt guilty if I unfollowed. They're following me. We're in community.
Yeah, I know.
But is this community, or is this what I believe it should be with community? And so checking in, how are you feeling? Because I truly believe social media is a beautiful tool. It has a dark side, but I'm curious, like, what am I consuming? Is this something that I feel good with? And do I want this on my page? Do I not want this on my page? In comments, there's trolls, as we call them.
Oh, yeah.
The ops, right?
Just
the people
the
that
ops
often come back. I toured with that as well, and was inviting what kind of disagreeableness did I want to hold, right? Because there are people who can disagree, and that's okay. Because everybody's not going to be friendly online. Like, you're open up into a whole space.
Oh, yeah.
But there are people that are out there that maybe intentionally try to hurt you with their comments. And I started to choose and decipher and have discernment about what felt right for me to respond to.
Right. You know what I've noticed too, and noticed, this doesn't happen a whole lot.
Yeah.
For me, I ain't out here popping like you in these social media streets. But but there was one time where I did receive a negative comment, and I responded very respectfully. And somebody replied to my response and was like, yeah. It was almost like your community is, they want to know how are you going to respond?
They're watching you.
They're watching.
Absolutely are.
How are you going to respond to this comment?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And like, that could almost improve the strengthen your community even more.
Yes, yeah.
Because they know, okay, they are riding for what they said. They ain't gonna punk out. Integrity. Yes, integrity is important.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I went on this dang rant and I forgot what I was going to say next.
No, but I'll build on that though, because what you're saying is why I hear a lot of people that struggle to build community and have an online presence, because they're afraid often of how might people see me. And that's the real, and I think that shows up in online, because you're more vulnerable. You're not really in control of how people see you because you're public.
As soon as you hit post, it's
there. But that's exactly what happens on a micro level of community, right? It's like, ooh, if I talk to this person or if I try to connect, I'm so worried about how they'll see me or how they'll view me that stops me from feeling I can be authentic in community, right? And so it's the same thing that happens on social media, where people are like, oh, should I post this or not? What if people say this? We see that replicated in our micro communities as well.
How many times, I remember my question, how many times do you feel like your community has changed with you? Because I feel like, as a shorty, my community is one thing, but now as a 40-year-old man, my community is totally different.
Yeah.
What is that process like for you, or how has that evolved for you?
I've been thinking about that a lot. I think I'm really blessed because the community I built when I was very young, I would say like college and earlier, has grown with me. And I feel honored all the time, because I'm like, if people who knew me before grad school, like, we're still homies. I was on the phone talking to one of my friends earlier. Like, it's a closeness, and I feel there's a level of vulnerability, and they've grown as well. Like, not in the same ways we've grown, but we've held space for each other's growth and building connection. I've noticed that my community has changed so much for people who met me after grad school. And that has shape-shifted even more so than that foundation. And so I realized that community hasn't evolved as much with me as much as I would hope. And it's something I'm still thinking about, like, what is going on within that? But I think more of the communities that you really invest in, when you think about it being like a garden and a seed, how much are we investing in community now? Because I see that more of like timing rather than like even my age. Because you and I, like, we've had so many, right? We've grown, but I feel like there was a lot of intention and care and connection that was built compared to when I look at the relationships that haven't grown with me. I feel like we collectively haven't been watering the depths of the seeds. And I also realized for me, my community needs have changed. Where maybe when I was in certain points in time, that community meant like, hey, let's help through these certain situations happening in our life. But as I've grown within myself, community is meaning I want the roots, right? I want a deeper connection. I want a more personable connection. I want to be seen and known, and I want to also see and know you as well, and then not to feel threatening or not to be in comparison or any of that. And I've noticed like that has been the difference for me in what community grows with me, because that's a stronger need than maybe I had been aware of. when I was younger.
No, that's so real. And I
Yeah.
think for me, as it's funny because as I get older, not funny because as I get older, I know exactly what I want to contribute to a community. I know who I want to be a part of my
Yes.
community,
Yes.
and I'm not making any exceptions or anything
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
anything because you know, it's hard enough, you know, feeling like you're alone to have people a part of your community that don't know how to maybe if I didn't have anybody that I would say like my top 5 people, if I didn't have anybody, one of them I can call and be able to vent to
Hmm.
without getting like a oh word, oh that's crazy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? It's like what are we doing? You know
Right. Yeah.
what am I doing? Because I want to pour into you. I also want to be poured into,
Hmm.
and if I'm not getting that from the ones that are saying this is my community,
Yes.
then maybe it's time for me to reevaluate who's a part of that community.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I would even say like it sounds like because often our first thought is like, all right, I gotta cut people off, right? Like, and I've been there. I've been there. I know it. But I say is now you get to reevaluate the investment, right? Think of like the gardens you have, right? Okay, maybe this, piece of my community, like this is the type of water, this is the type of soil, this type of nourishment this needs. But with this community that I'm wanting here, this is what I need within that. It's not like this doesn't have a place anymore.
Right.
But the type of investment and the time you spend in that community might shift depending on like where you're at in that time of your life.
Right. That's real. So before I get you going, I got to bring it up. I didn't want to. I wanted to wait.
I ain't gonna be nervous. What?
My City, My Health,
Hey, okay.
2024. Look, I won't say nothing crazy. You
I
like,
was
boy,
nervous. I was like, hold
where
on.
is you going?
Right.
We got you back
Yes.
for the 3rd year.
I feel honored. Like I
In
just
a
got
row.
giddy. Like what? It's like you just told me time and date. I was like, I'll pop up.
In a row. And it's so funny how our conversation here aligns with the conversation we're having at My City, My Health
Yeah.
for the mental health panel.
Yeah.
And why I think it's important is that, like, one, I want to get your thoughts on My City, My Health in general. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Okay.
But 2 is the conversation we're having around community and why that is important for the healthcare professional to really understand. Because, like, we've been talking about it today around the things that are not evidence-based. Well, when we're trying to build community, there may be an evidence-based framework to build community, but like I don't think it's not as great as just what we're talking about today. So like, one, My City, My Health, how you feeling about it?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah.
And 2, when we're talking about that within the public health framework,
Yeah.
why is that important?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I hear you, actually, like, as you were saying, it finally came to my mind. Like My City, My Health. I used to see that as like, that's Corey. Yeah, here doing it. Like I was like, that's dope. And now, as I hear you talk about My City, My Health, and compound with community healing, it feels like everybody is saying My City, My Health. So it's a collective embrace of like, yeah, this our city, this our health. You know what I mean?
Yo,
and
that's
so,
real.
there's like that. My feels like collectively powerful, right? So when I think of it, it's so exciting. It's such a vibe. I look forward to it all the time because that's the first of anything I've ever been to. Like that when I say I walked in, I was listening to Fantasia. When I see you, I said, oh, my people. I said, oh, this is different. This is not the mindfulness, elevator music. I was like, oh, it's a vibe. And I felt like I could be myself.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't have to code switch. To me, that changed the game for me, whereas like to be in a space where I can just talk and I did not care, but I also felt invited in. Like you could feel the energy. There's a desire to have people be authentic, and so I felt like my full blackness was in that space.
Yo, that's real.
So I love that, and that's probably why you hear me in those spaces. Like I just feel it just comes because I'm like I'm here.
Yep.
As it relates to healthcare and like the importance we think about community healing. And this is what I tell, like especially the therapists that I supervise as well. When they leave your office, where are they going? Right? And if this is the only place that they have access to care, healing, comfort, support, we have a huge problem because then we're sending people out into isolation. And we think about the impacts that has on mental, physical, social, all kinds of health. Then you're creating a ripple effect where they become dependent on this one micro time in their day. And we think about therapy, that's often maybe a 60-minute session once a week. When you think about other healthcare, that's maybe like a 15 to 20-minute session. Who knows how often, right? So we're doing people a disservice when we do not emphasize the impact that community can have. When we emphasize who else is on this care team, maybe there's someone else that can help with medication. There's other people that can provide clarification. There's other people that can provide you support if you need to. Then you're having wellness become a lot more sustainable. And I believe that is a lot more sustainable than anything that we are doing in this moment. When we work together, we do good in a healthcare setting, but we don't often invite in other people to the play. We don't ask who else should be a part of this treatment. Who else do you feel like should be invited into these meetings with you, these opportunities, these appointments? Because that is where we get more collective help. Because if they fall outside of your space, they have someone they can call before. And guess what? That person's often free. Because realistically, if we talk about it, community, I don't believe community should be paid for. I believe it should be inherent. And if the only community someone has is something that have to be paid for, we have a problem.
No, that's real. That's real. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Period.
That period. Yeah. Kayla, as always, pleasure. I learned so much.
Likewise.
Thank you so much. Everybody, this was just a conversation around mental health. I am not a mental health therapist. Kayla is. But it's funny, I can say that now. Everybody I've had on here, outside of you and Brianne, I'd be like, we ain't therapists, but yo, we got one. But I want you to get help. Information to receive help or find help will be in the description of this episode. Coffee can't fix everything, but we will have a conversation over coffee every time till we get there. I'll holler at you next time.